Right now, inching towards that cliff. In less than a month, fiscal cliff becomes a reality unless Democrats and Republicans can get their act together and make a deal before it's too late. Both have made their opening offers, but with none of them being credible, who bends first? And next, Mayor Cory Booker attempting to live on $4.32 a day. Can he do it? And will his food stamp challenge draw attention to food insecurity in America? And later, what is Hillary's next move? She's one of the most respected figures in the country, and who would have saw that just a decade ago? But how did she go from where she was then to now a venerated Secretary of State? We're going to get into that and so much more over the next 60 minutes, including a debate about where the line starts and stops when it relates to the press monitoring things and getting involved. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thanks for joining us this Tuesday evening, December 4th. We're going to begin tonight once again with that fiscal cliff, and there are now two offers on the table that would keep us safe from the cliff, only both offers appear so frankly ridiculous there's no chance either one of them are going to go anywhere. We got both sides, Republican leadership in the House and the president, both so apparently disengaged from the process that a deal is looking less and less likely every day. And as the calendar says, time is running out. We are now just 26 days from going off that cliff, and we're doing it seemingly at full speed. So tonight, we're going to be asking our panel whether the risk of going off the cliff is enough to stop the lawmakers from doing it, and who's got more leverage here as the clock ticks down. We're also going to ask whether or not history can prove to be a guide here. Lawmakers being able to look at prior presidents and prior Congresses dealing with the same kind of issues, maybe getting above party politics for good of nation, or maybe just for self-preservation. But first, the latest bit of bad news in the cliff and offers being roundly rejected from both sides. And for that, let's bring in Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent.
Yeah, the only thing more impressive than the offers, Rich, has been with the speed with which the other side has rejected each one of them. The two deals are so far apart that no one seriously thinks either is going to serve even as the basis for an eventual deal. But with each side still pointing fingers at the other and neither side warming to the idea of top-level face-to-face talks, it seems more and more likely we could go over the cliff before we resolve the cliff.
Both the White House and congressional Republicans have put forward a plan to avoid the fiscal cliff, but they're miles apart and digging in their heels. Today, President Obama told Bloomberg TV a deal is possible, but
unfortunately, the Speaker's proposal right now is still out of balance.
That plan sent to the White House yesterday offers a total of $2.2 trillion in deficit reduction over the next decade, including $1.2 trillion in spending cuts and $800 billion in new tax revenue. But no rate increases on the top 2% of taxpayers. And that's non-negotiable for President Obama.
We're not going to be able to get a deal without it.
The White House says the Republican math just doesn't add up.
It's magic beans and fairy dust.
With just 28 days until the deadline, negotiations have reached a stalemate.
There's nothing going on privately that's not going on publicly.
There are no plans at this time for congressional leaders to meet with the president at the White House, and it doesn't sound like he's sending out invitations anytime soon.
I don't think that the issue right now has to do with sitting in a room.
Earlier today, the president did meet with a bipartisan group of governors.
We understand this will be a shared sacrifice as you have to look at spending cuts. States are willing to do more with less.
Okay, let's bring in the panel on this. We've got Scott Levinson, Democratic political consultant and president of the Advance Group, and Tom Doherty, former advisor to New York Governor George Pataki and now a partner with Mercury Public Strategies, and we've already met Andrew. All right, let me give you both heat from both sides. For the Democrats, there has been a perception, I don't think too unfair, Scott, from the left wing of the party that said, we win, you lose in November, you capitulate, president, don't even give an inch. I know negotiations about posturing in the beginning, but is it fair to say that the left is going to make this harder for the president to make a deal at the end that makes sense?
No, I mean, I think the president's been very clear what he needs in order to make a deal, and I think it's quite clear that the American public has a feel that that's kind of right. It kind of makes sense.
Let me be more specific. Does the president acknowledge at the end that in addition to demanding not just revenues but rate increases from the right, he's going to have to do something, not just say something, but do something as it relates to entitlements and make some substantive reform? Or does he think, like some Democrats in Congress, that Social Security, Medicare should be off the table completely?
I mean, I think nothing is non-negotiable, and I think the president said that, except for the fact that you got to have everybody play by the same set of rules. And when you have a recession, you got to expect that those richest Americans are going to add a little bit more to the pot. He's been pretty clear from that from the beginning. He ran on that. The public voted him into office on that basis. I think now the Republicans have an obligation to the country to move that in the right direction.
I know you disagree, Tom, in terms of your read of it, but let me ask this. I thought a week and a half ago or so, when Congressman Cole, the Republican, said, all right, listen, I'm up for extending anybody making less than 250 grand, extend theirs, and then we'll talk about the 250 after. I thought he gave cover for the Republican Party, whether, as Andrew said, some rumors they'd vote present on that kind of a deal, that thing would be done. And then we'd be dealing with the harder stuff, which is what happens to the top 2%, what would be the rate, what would be maybe the number's not 250, it's a different one. We now seem like we're back to ground zero, where we're even still debating that rates won't go up at all on the top end. Is this just posturing, or do you think that there is a real fight within Republican circles? We don't give an inch on raising rates on anybody.
I think it's all posturing, but let's go back in time here, because so much of this is just hypocritical on the point of the president. He allowed the Bush tax cuts on the wealthiest to continue under his presidency in the midst of a recession. And now he thinks that all of a sudden he has this great mandate from the American people, when quite frankly, John Boehner, days after the election, and almost 3 weeks went by since we heard a peep from the president about these negotiations. The point is, the president got from the Republicans $800 billion in new revenue, okay? All we're looking for on our side of the fence is, forget how you want to get there. We could have that argument, and again, I think it's all posturing, is where are the cuts? How are we balancing our budget moving forward? This is a president who said, when George Bush was president, the increase in debt was, wait, Scott, these are facts. It was immoral.
It's like you
now the debt just
we can spend. Country to the cliff.
Wait a second, Scott. Scott, you went to grammar school. I went to grammar school. In grammar school, here's how it works. Let's do a refresher course for the American public. The president presents a budget. The House presents a budget. The Senate, which your Senate hasn't done one in 3 years, presents a budget. The House and Senate get together. They confer. They get together. They go to the president and negotiate a budget.
But
this is not a fair way of
without doing the schoolhouse rock.
But Richard, this is the way that the world should work.
But tell me how. Tell the people what they don't know, which is, and you do know. Go back to the years in the Pataki administration when you guys were going through the three-ring circus in Albany to try and get a budget passed, and you got the posturing. At what point do you look at the clock and say, all right, if I want to get this thing passed on time here, what point do the ships have to pass in the night?
They don't ultimately, because what happened was in Albany, the only way we got the ships in the same room was when the governor was able to say, I'm withholding your paychecks. That was the motivating factor. They stopped getting paid. Well, then they realized, well, we got enough outside income, we don't have to worry about it, and it just dragged on and dragged on and dragged on.
The difference here is that you're not dealing with lawmakers not getting their paychecks, is that every time we've dealt with budgeting or negotiations about the economy or the economic structure of the country over the last 4+ years, it's been at the barrel of a gun. It's been, it's been
and this
with
barrel
the risk.
Sequestering is a much more pronounced.
It's been at the risk of crashing the entire economy. That's the only thing that's brought the two sides together. That's the only reason that Obama signed off on an extension of the Bush tax.
That's what I want to get from you, Scott.
That's not so disturbing.
But why didn't he wait a year and a half to talk about it?
Okay, but leave all that around. But leave all that.
But
you know what? You can't forget that. Time it, guys. At the end, nobody cares about the 435 guys or the 530. They don't really care about how mean they're talking to each other. My question is, down deep, do you think Democrats finally grew a spine, or that they're overplaying their hand?
I think they are doing what they said they were going to do. And they're being pretty consistent with what they ran on and bringing it to the public.
Which is what?
All right. We're going to have this debate continuing in the break here. But when we come back from the break here, I want to talk a little bit about, yes, the substance, but also the style. It was touched on here by Tom. The president, if you look at a historical context, hasn't gotten his hands as dirty as some predecessors. Is it time he takes an approach more like FDR or more like Lincoln, if you've seen the movie, or maybe an LBJ here? Should he model himself after those guys in trying times and get directly into the arena? We're going to talk about that after this.